So, in an effort to maybe get some clicks on the schedule story, the Statesman didn't just go with, hey, here's the Austin FC schedule. Here are the games you can go see. Here are the Eastern Conference road trips, all the things that we go for. They, of course, went with, will Lionel Messi be coming to Austin? 2025 MLS schedule released. And of course, the answer was not unless he makes the All-Star game. So, which of course is coming to Austin July 23rd, which is what I had surmised based on the calendar. So we did get the schedule drop today. That was exciting. We're going to talk about that momentarily. But what do you think of that tactic?
I think it's how search engine optimization, social media
Mm-hmm.
optimization algorithms work these days. But I think most importantly, Phil, it's important for Austin folks to keep in mind, no, sorry, we don't have Messi at home because we got Leo Campana at home. We've got Leo Campana at home because he got
Mm-hmm.
traded to the New England Revs, and the New England Revs will be coming to Q2 Stadium on July 12th, in the middle
Mm-hmm.
of, or actually just in advance of Leagues Cup Wednesdays
And the All-Star game. Yeah.
and the All Star game. Look at that.
So
I mean, just think the summer used to be dreaded just because of the heat. Now you can dread it because of the heat and the schedule congestion. Schedule congestion. Just what everybody wanted.
And of course, one of the OA trips we'll talk about this is immediately after the All-Star game. It's going to be a busy week for some people, I'm sure. But yeah, I guess we should probably talk about all the gam that Leo Campana brought. This was an outrageous trade. According to Lizzie Bescherano at ESPN, of course, Tom Bogert broke this as he does. 2.5 million in general allocation money split between 2025 and 2026, a 2025 international roster spot and a 2026 international roster spot.
I mean,
That's a big trade. The most expensive domestic trade before that, do you remember? Trivia question
um,
time. In
uh,
January
uh,
22,
Breck Shea.
involved
I don't know. I don't know, Phil. I literally don't know the answer. So
involved
when I don't
FC
know the answer,
Dallas.
oh, for no, not Ferreira because he hasn't been traded yet. As much as they keep
Mm-mm.
trying, that was just an opportunity to take a dig at Ferreira. I'm drawing a blank because, as you know, I think of nothing but FC Dallas. My mind's a blur because all I can think about is how Lalas Abubakar plays for them now.
Oh yeah. Yeah, as if there was not a reason to hate FC Dallas or Abubakar more. I love that convergence. So actually the answer is Paul Areola from DC United for 2 million in guaranteed GAM
Ah,
plus 300 in conditional GAM, whatever that might.
I was so close by thinking of his hip locked partner, Jesus Ferreira, who's never been traded, because they're both theoretically rumored to be moving to the Sounders, which would be quite the development
Oh
if it
God, that'd be
actually goes
hilarious.
through. I mean, there's no prohibition against U.S. businesses doing business with other U.S. businesses, like there are U.S. businesses doing business with Russian soccer clubs. So this one might
Hmm.
actually stand a chance of going through. Wow.
Right.
So finally, someone has defeated Paul the Great One Areola.
Right.
Wow.
Oh, also, Inter Miami will retain percentage of any future moves for Campana and receive up to another 750,000 in GAM if the player meets certain performance-based incentives. So
I mean,
Miami's going to have a whole bunch of GAM to play with now.
the base 3.25 is
Mhm.
almost equal to the 3.3 that they got in their GAM allotment.
Right.
Granted, not all of that is going to be 2025 GAM, but I mean, that's still quite the thing.
Mhm.
Because that, if you want to just ball it all together, that puts them at more overall GAM than the leader in the GAM allotment, Atlanta United, who got
Mhm.
6.5. Because we don't know how that's going to get split. It doesn't say it's going to be evenly split necessarily.
Right, right. And again, we're going to get into GAM talk in a second here because there's a very kind of monumental thing that happened today in addition to the schedule drop. So we're going to celebrate that in a little bit here. But I guess we have to, at this point now, talk about all the moves Austin's made.
Like the Invisible Man, they have gone unseen in the night because all the player moves, none of it's public yet if it's
They have some
actually
coaches.
happened, but they do have some coaches. They are retaining Davy Arnaud, which we noted
Mhm.
was a possibility and something that both of us thought would not be a bad thing. Davy Arnaud is his own man, as we have seen
Mhm.
in momentary decision making visible disagreements on the sideline, which is one of the things that we notched in his favor of. He has his own mind. He is not kept in the shed. He's got his own career and everything. And I think we saw some of that deep tactics knowledge play out in his one and only game as Austin FC head coach thus far. Um, and his statement about his family having made Austin a home and really loving the place. Their high performance director can go out the door to Atlanta, and their goalkeeper coach can get replaced by one of the incoming guys. But Davy
Wait,
Arnaud
wait.
is a club man.
We're kind of going through our entire.
We're going through everything. We're touching on all of it. Phil, the
Yeah.
real emergency is we need theme music now.
Emergency podcast. Better did a thing, so we gotta talk about it. Emergency podcast. It's an emergency. Emergency podcast. Shut up, hurry up, shut up, hurry up, shut up. Emergency podcast. It's an emergency.
Hey, a hearty hello to you all, and welcome to Emergency Podcast, the Austin FC podcast, where we talk about all the Austin FC emergencies. We are here recording on Thursday evening, and lo and behold, we have a schedule to gaze at. We have 34 games to look forward to in 2025. There might be a point in the season where we will not look forward to some of these games, as was the case last year, but we have them all, and we're going to give you some thoughts. We've given you our entire rundown of what we're doing thanks to Moisés, how are you doing?
I have so much that I want to talk about. I felt like, look, it's almost Christmas, and we had to give everybody a peek at the gifts. They're in the top of the hall closet. That's where the parental units, the guardians of parental nature, store them every year, and you know that, and you can't help but look. And yeah, this is going to be a quick one because we don't have player moves to talk about yet.
We do not.
Maybe we'll get some last minute gifts from Santa on that front. But I'm feeling good. My partner got a new Breville espresso machine. So I'm
Cool.
powered. I'm powered by two shots of dark potion, thanks to my retired barista partner. Just that phrasing makes me think of the classic Billy Joel song, "Retired Barista," to the tune of Downeaster Alexa. I just sing exactly two words because there are people who think that you sing the theme song, and there are people who think that I sing the theme song. Neither one of
Right.
us sings the theme song.
No, Whammo sings the
Whammo.
theme song, a musician named Whammo. So
A
he
musician
exists,
named
he's a
Whammo
real person.
who
He
exists
has a
is a
real
real
name, which
person,
is
not AI
real name is not
generated.
Whammo, but everybody knows him by Whammo. So yes, to clear that up, we have sung, but we do
Yeah.
not sing the theme song. So all right,
So
well, let's
the
get
big
to
news
it.
is
We
the
got a
schedule.
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 Yeah.
Let's talk schedule, Phil. What immediately jumped out at you about the schedule drop? Where did your eyes go first? What fascinated and captivated you most?
So I always look at the Eastern Conference road trips just because that's the one changing thing year after year. There's going to be constants throughout the entire schedule. In most cases, you're going to be playing home and away against all the Western Conference teams. Of course, with the situation with uneven East and West teams, you had the Houston, Dallas, 3 games each kerfuffle, which ruined Copa Tejas for several years. But what was it that you said about San Diego?
San Diego has once again brought balance to the force.
That first game is there's a home game March 23rd, so you can see Team Manhole Cover FC, as somebody derisively called them during their very underwhelming expansion draft. They'll be coming to Q2. And then May 31st, if you want to take a road trip to San Diego, that is the time where you can do that. And that is the only point in the schedule where Austin will have 2 road games in a row. That is May 31st at San Diego. And then June 7th at our friends, the Rapids. The Den Verde trip is going to be on the heels of the San Diego trip. If you want to explore the Great West and take some time off of work and make it a driving trip or something like that, you could conceivably do that. So yeah, so in terms of our Eastern games, the away matches are a pretty good assortment of cities. We've got
Yeah.
Cincinnati on May 10th, good soccer town. It seems like it's lively. It seems like there's a good kind of pre-game culture there. And then DC 726. Last year was the All-Star game for that. It was a good time. DC is a great city if you have not been. Obviously, it's going to be a little more Trumpified than it was last time. So who knows what DC is going to be like by July after 6 months into the administration, but that is there, and that is right after the All-Star game, as we mentioned. So if you are staying for All-Star festivities, then you would turn around and travel after that. And then what I think is probably the best of the three cities, the one that I'm eyeing and contemplating, and that is August 23rd in Montreal, because of course, French Canadian heritage, Quebec, where all my family on my mom's side is right down the road. And I've not been there in a hot minute. The home matches of the Eastern teams, Atlanta Red Bulls, that is your Eastern Conference reigning champion Red Bulls, and then the Revs, and as we mentioned, Leo Campana's Revs. Leo Campana's New
Yeah.
England Revolution will be coming along with all the other assortment of older gentleman players that the Revs have, but not Nick Lima. Nick Lima
Nope.
was not retained. Not
Thank
getting
goodness.
Nick Lima.
Austin will still
Yeah,
play against Nick Lima now and once again of the Quakes when Austin play the Quakes later in the season. A few little things notable to me. I'll start on the Quakes. Austin
Mhm,
doesn't play the Quakes until August 30th. And then
mhm.
the final game of the season is away at San Jose. Austin once again got a home opener on opening day, February 22nd, which there's question. Austin got the All-Star game. Is Austin going to get a home opener? Well, they got the home opener fourth season in a row. One would
Mhm.
expect that streak to probably break next season. The weirdness of the schedule isn't,
Mhm.
as you noted, the kind of stuff that we've gotten used to in previous years where it's like, why are we playing Houston four times? Away and home against Houston and Dallas once each. I mean, that feels like the Christmas drop to me.
Sure.
Not having to play the rebuilding mode Quakes until August and then in mid October. Is that a blessing or a curse? You mentioned the Montreal away game. I think
Mhm.
that one happening in mid August, that is so much nicer than, say, playing Atlanta or one of the other Southern Eastern Conference teams in that
Agreed.
kind of heat. It's a nice time of year in Montreal. It has long been on my list of cities that I want to visit. I've had Canadian poutine, but I haven't had it in the real ancestral home of Canadian poutine,
Yeah,
and that's
yeah.
Quebec. All right, buddy. I tell you what, we go up country. We're going to eat the good. We're going to have a good time. Okay. Uh,
Mais oui. Right.
mais oui.
We're, that's
The
French. So,
that's that is
which you
French.
will want to know a little bit. You can get by with English in Montreal, but speaking French helps and probably makes people like you more.
It's going to be the first time Atlanta and the Revs play at Q2.
Mhm.
That's something that the club called out in their press release. My mind immediately went to Copa Tejas, which was, oh man,
Oh,
how weird and unbalanced of a schedule is this going to be? How spread out is it going to be? It turns out it's
mhm,
spread out in a way I didn't expect. The first Copa Tejas
mhm,
match will be away at Houston on April 26th, and then
mhm.
Copa Tejas won't get touched again until August when Austin plays Houston and Dallas back to back. In theory, we don't have the actual Leagues Cup schedule. There will be Wednesday Leagues Cup matches in the month of August. So Houston at Q2 on August 9th, Dallas at Q2 on August 16th. And if not decided on points mathematically by then, Copa Tejas could be decided away in the oven at Frisco on September 13th.
Yeah,
Uh,
because I think that really Copa Tejas games should be played when it's 105 degrees out.
I
I think this is
mean,
fantastic.
it puts the Tejas in Copa Tejas. Let's be honest. Possible advantages to that is Dallas is in a bit of a conceptual rebuild.
Mhm.
Austin is definitely in a rebuild, but I feel like if Dallas is if Dallas ends up trading away Areola and Ferreira, then either they will be desperately fighting for playoff points at this point,
Mhm.
or the rebuild will have worked and they will be relatively comfortable. And I think the former is more likely than the latter. On the Houston side of things, I don't know. I mean, they'll finally have offloaded themselves Ache Ache, who,
Yeah.
in a national league in a national team context, I think of differently than I do for Houston. I don't think
Mhm.
he has done that much for Houston. They've touted him as what their whole squad was built around. Houston is refactoring and rebuilding. Um, Now that it's entirely clear that their star man, star maker guy was not really what that squad was built around. I think Copa Tejas this year is going to be interesting, and it being that compact is something that it feels more European in a way that I like the Coppa Italia, like the Carabao Cup, those kinds of cup competitions. I don't like the time of year that it's happening, but it does create pre-playoff drama where not only your squad's going to be fighting for playoff points, positioning, seeding, all that kind of stuff, though who knows, the playoff format might change in addition to Leagues Cup changing. It'll be an interesting time to see it happen, and it will be a true test of something that Roto Borrell has brought up, which is the heat. If you're bringing in players, they've got to be able to play in Texas heat. And so as miserable as it is for the players, and my sympathies go to the players, to me, this feels like a more natural home base for the compressed Texas Cup competition. I kind of like it. That's where I sit on it at the moment.
Yeah.
But, check with me in a few months and I might hate it.
Yeah. So it makes a certain kind of sense. So yeah, just a couple things. You were saying some things that made me think of some things. So Hector Herrera, this is kind of his incredible arc. So 2022, played in 10 games. Of course, he was a mid-season acquisition, started 6, 0 goals, 1 assist. Not so great. 2023, played in 30 games, started 29, got a whole bunch of minutes, 4 goals, 17 assists, just absolutely absurd numbers. And then, of course, 2024, 1 goal, 3 assists in 22 games and 116 minutes, and finished his Dynamo career by spitting at a ref in a playoff.
Can I ask you to compare those two 2023 Rigoni numbers? Not now, just as a thing to do later, because I think that's a dynamic.
No, coming right up. They actually have really similar arcs. So
weird.
So they were both, listen to this. So they were both mid-season acquisitions in 2022. Rigoni got a whole 282 minutes, no goals, no assists. 2023, that was his peak year. Unfortunately, his peak year was 5 goals and 6 assists in 2,198 minutes. And then, of course, before his untimely exit in May, 702 minutes, 1 goal, 0 assists. So essentially, Emiliano Rigoni is Hector Herrera.
Yeah, there you go. There you
Hector
go.
Herrera light. We have Hector Herrera, and his name is Emiliano Rigoni.
There we go. We got Hector Herrera at home, and his name is Emiliano Rigoni.
So one thing I wanted to say, so the openers against Sporting Kansas City on February 22nd, which, that's reasonable, right? So it's a home opener. That's great. SKC, like Minnesota last year, a familiar, sometimes beatable Midwestern opponent. Here's the kicker, though. Sporting Kansas City and Austin are playing 2 weeks before the home opener at Coachella as part of the Coachella Valley Invitational, which I wrote about earlier this week. So that's going to be really weird. I'm just wondering tactically what the teams are going to do, because they're probably not going to want to show everything that they're wanting to do in 2 weeks' time when they play each other for real.
That makes the Coachella away trip, since most of those matches will be open to the public, with the exception of the Charlotte match, because Charlotte has to keep everything close to the vest against a team that they are not going to play in the regular season at all. All right, guys, go ahead, be weird. I would say that now that the schedule's out, maybe the status of that game changes, because we know that Nico doesn't care, doesn't mind the match being open to the public. It would be on Charlotte to decide that. I think we see more people looking at that Coachella Valley Invitational as an away trip and doing it as you have said, as you've honestly sold me. It is the best preseason party out there. And
much fun. Yeah, it's go look at my article. I mean, I completely sell it there. I mean, it's there's food, there's drink, you get to wander from one side of the complex to the other, bleachers back to back. You've got a field on one side of that, you got a field on the other side of that, so you can basically get from one game to the other. And they are playing staggered times, so you'll have like an 11 a.m. game and you'll have a noon game. So if it's halftime, you like literally walk over 30-40 yards and you are watching the other games. So really cool event. Fans come down from different parts of the country, obviously, to rep their teams. It's great. And February in Palm Springs is pretty glorious.
A couple other little things that I wanted to note. May 3rd, Austin will host Kip Keller's Minnesota United.
Oh, got picked up in the re-entry draft.
He got picked up in the re-entry draft. We'll see if he gets minutes or if he rides the bench. We'll see if he gets bullied in the stands. May is awfully packed. where not knowing what the Open Cup schedule is looking like, even
Mhm.
without that,
Oh God.
there is
Yeah, I
space.
just noticed that. Oh
Yeah,
my
that
God.
May is kind of nuts. Like that is
There's
the thing.
7 games
Seven
in
games,
May.
7 games in May, 7 games in May. Like the week break between May 3rd at home against Minnesota and away at Cincinnati on May 10th. Then 4 days later at home against Atlanta, that
Hmm.
Saturday at home against Vancouver,
Hmm.
a week off, okay,
Yeah. Sure.
away at Minnesota. The Kip Keller Cup is being played in May. Will there be
And then why
fatal
not
back
another
passes? Who
Wednesday game?
knows? Why not another Wednesday game? And then, oh, yeah, a Wednesday game 4 days
And that
later
is,
at home against RSL. And then
mhm.
3 days after that, away at San Diego, the completion of the 2-match San Diego thing. That that May schedule looks completely insane in ways
Mhm.
that once Open Cup dates get thrown out, what other month will look as insane as May looks right now once that drops?
Yeah, and we don't know what Leagues Cup is going to look like yet, but they are talking about like only 18 teams qualifying. If you go by the Supporters Shield standings, Austin would qualify. They would be in the top 18. If you go by whoever made the playoffs, they would not. So I'm really curious to see how that's going to shake out.
The president of Liga MX said that from his comments, and it seems reliable, that there would be some
Mhm.
sort of knockout qualifier. So
Mm,
that
okay.
is
Yeah, that's right.
so there's Leagues Cup and there's pre-Leagues Cup.
God.
Who will be the 18 teams? How that will play out, to
Mhm.
me, like, can that please be as few matches as humanly possible? Can it just be everybody plays 2 matches and it's based on points?
They
Or
should do a skills challenge like they do at the All-Star game
yeah, exactly. Golden
and just have four
goals,
teams. Yeah, just
do
bring
all
four
kinds
teams
of
in.
fun things.
Whoever wins, you're in Leagues Cup. Congratulations.
Yeah, there's probably other stuff in the schedule mix that will come to us, but based on what has been released, that's the stuff that leaps out at me, and we'll have to wait for other dominoes to fall for
Right.
more things to assess. Where are we going next, Phil? Are we going to
We
the
are
faraway
going,
land of Gam?
not yet. We
Not
will get
yet.
to GAM
Oh,
last. We'll leave GAM for last.
we'll leave Gam
We're
for
gonna go to
last.
Spain, and we're
We're
gonna
gonna
we're gonna
we're
go
gonna
to
traipse
Spain,
down
cut through the Middle East, and we're
the
gonna bring in 3 new assistant coaches.
the Verde Brick Road leads us to someone who formerly worked for Valencia, a club that we're becoming familiar with. Generally, it feels like maybe the club has rescued somebody from the clutches of the Mideast League, where I'm sure that they were well compensated, but maybe they're glad to be in the West as the world descends into chaos.
Perhaps. Yeah. So we have Kuro Galan, who's the new Verde goalkeeping coach. He was most recently with Al Rayed, which is a Saudi Pro League team. I believe they were currently, or when the time I wrote this, they were 12th, was also with Shakhtar Donetsk, who I like to call Wax Tap because that's what the Cyrillic letters look like if you are pronouncing them in English.
Shakhtar, it bears mentioning, is one of the legendary clubs of Ukraine.
Mhm.
They,
Right.
them, and Dynamo Kiev, they are two of the gigantes that, as much as
Right.
they have continued to try to keep hopping along, things are
Right.
getting more and more difficult for them.
For sure. Yeah. And Donetsk is in eastern Ukraine. So they have, as you have probably can imagine, they are having quite a time, have had to relocate the team from there to be able to continue on. He was the head of goalkeeping for Atletico Madrid's youth program for 5 years, which is cool, like that. And then we have Beto Gonzalez. He was with the UAE Football Association, 5 years with Al Ain, which is the most successful club in that country. And he's the one that got a big break from Estevez in Valencia's academy and then just went from there. So obviously, long-term connection there. They've known each other a long time. They've worked together before. They're now working together again. And then we have something called a field analyst coach, which I think is along the lines of Landon was explaining this on Moon Tower a little bit. Basically, a lot of kind of tape analysis and things like that. But I think he also has some background in methodology. That's going to be interesting. He was at FC Juarez for 2 years, including the year that Juarez beat Verde in the Leagues Cup. And then he was also at Alajuelense, I believe, one of Costa Rica's most successful teams. You might recognize that name from CONCACAF Champions Cup. And he's also written a book about Pep Guardiola called Pep Tactico, which you cannot find on Amazon. It's being sold in obscure places. You can
Have you
hunt online. Good luck to you.
have you secured a copy of Pep
I
the
have
book,
not,
or are you
not
still
yet,
still
not yet.
searching? So you're
Yeah,
saying
it's
there
still.
might be a bounty on it if somebody can track one down. Look, we're real
Mhm.
busy here at Verde All Day headquarters.
Christmas is coming.
Christmas is coming. Give Phil the gift of help. See what we can come up with. What do you think? We have limited information to go on, but what do you
Mhm.
think these coaching moves speak to? What do they mean?
Other than the full Spaniardification of the coaching staff, say for Daviano, who of course is going to bring in institutional knowledge and all that, I think you have Burrell and Estevez kind of more obviously in lockstep, considering who they're hiring. Obviously, Estevez is comfortable with these coaches, but at the same time, it looks like Burrell is comfortable with having some of his countrymen as the coaches too. So I think that's interesting. I think in terms of what they're going to do, there was a Vamos Verde interview with Estevez that I just finished listening to, and he talked about using the ball to basically discombobulate opponents. It was very reminiscent of Josh Wolf, but then he also talked about executing a high press. So it's kind of this unicorn, this combination of being very tactically sound on the ball and doing a lot and being aggressive and being possession based, but then also being a high pressing team like the Red Bulls.
I
So
mean,
it
eh,
sounds like Estevez wants to kind of do it all and be curious to see if these coaches can help him get there and if they can get the talent remaining to do that. We are still waiting for Fafa Picault, which we are totally expecting because Bogert had said that he liked Jack Elliott to Chicago, he liked Lalas Abubakar to Dallas, and he liked Pico to Austin. And the only one of those three things has not happened as green smoke involved with them. So I kind of expect that's going to be an announcement that we'll see pretty soon.
yeah, and I have a feeling that maybe a deal was done in principle, and it's the sort of thing that you've got to get a player and their family notified and okay with it and everything, and a player can agree to something, but that Pico's got a family, right? Like a partner and kids or something. This is the side of things that I think I need to have a swoon tower phone that I can go, hey, what's the family situation of this given player? You guys know, right?
Yeah.
But I
What do
want
their
to.
kids look like on Instagram? All that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, do their kids look happy? Do they look happy in the Canadian schooling system? A player moving from playing for a Canadian team uh, in a cooler climate to the extreme heat of Texas that's an adaptation process. And so I could see there being a little bit of the player doesn't really have much of a choice if there's nobody else come calling for a certain dollar amount. But there is that making sure that their family feels notified, feels comfortable, and that the transition is not going to be rough and ragged. So that's where my head's at.
I don't know. So I just pulled up Wikipedia, infallible Wikipedia. Here's the entirety of Pico's personal life section. Pico has maintained a connection with his Haitian roots and holds passports from both the United States and Haiti. Pico is also very fond of Haitian cuisine and music. That stands to reason. He especially enjoys cooked plantain, and his friends and cousin are even part of a Haitian band. He speaks 7 languages, 5 of which he is fluent in: English, Creole, French, Italian, and Spanish, while speaking a little Portuguese and German. During his time in Italy, he maintained close relationships with players who now play in the Serie A and as an Italian agent. So he is either ashamed of his family and has not talked about them, or it seems like he may be single because you probably would mention some wife and kids in this, or maybe just Wikipedia didn't research hard enough, and indeed he has a loving family. This is something that we're going to check in on,
We're going to do
but
some
we
deep
do.
digging. We're going to employ all of our Verde All Day spies that we can. Here's what
This Haitian band thing is pretty
well,
intriguing
I'm
though.
I'm doubling down on the fact that it's going to happen because we need a Haitian sensation on the first team.
Mm,
I'm a big fan. I have many Haitian friends. I love Haitian culture, and I'm a big fan of Haitian playmaking footballers. I think he's a great fit for the many reasons that we've elucidated previously. We are going to do that deep dive on Canadian Champion Cup winner Fafa Pico, reigning Canadian champion. Frankly, we could say that they couldn't have done it without him. Not that I watched the game because it was not easily viewable in the United States the way that it was
right,
on
right. It was
broadcast in
not.
Canada.
Yeah, yeah. So the Haitian sensation, I love that.
Yeah.
That is a thing to shout in the press box inappropriately whenever he scores. That'll be fun. Yeah. So that's again, that kind of wraps it up for coaches. Anything else thoughts there before we move on
No,
to
I,
Gam, glorious
I,
Gam?
I think it'll be interesting to find out who is going to be in charge of the high performance department now that
Mhm.
Dave Tenney has moved on to Atlanta. But lacking data like we are on players, we don't got
Mhm.
anything. It's time to be wowed by the marvelous, magical, mysterious Wizard of Gam. What do we got
Mhm.
Gam wise, Phil?
Right. Oh, one more thing on the coaches. They are all 30 somethings I did research on, and they are all quite good looking if that is your thing. And
Mm-hmm,
I know for
mm-hmm,
a lot of fans out
mm-hmm.
there, and judging from photos I shared with the Handsome Boys Modeling Football Club group on Slack, they were appreciated.
It
So
seems it seems that
that is another aspect. That's another facet here in the
it seems that there is full approbation of there being a smoke show on the sidelines at all times going into the 2025 season, which it's good to know where the good meat is.
Mhm. All of a sudden the seats in 106 and 107 have just gotten infinitely more valuable.
Binoculars being sold at a
Mhm.
premium in the stadium illegally.
All right, let's move to GAM. So this was interesting. The league just went ahead and said, yeah, we're going to tell you who's got GAM. We're going to tell you
Okay,
who's
everybody's
rocking with
got
GAM.
GAM. Some more
Well,
than
everybody's
others.
got some GAM, but
Everybody's got
yeah,
some.
some more than others. So basically, yeah. So MLS Soccer just dropped a story. MLS publishes 2025 general allocation money available to clubs. You heard the groans of several nerds around the league who have spent months and months calculating GAM, including some folks here in Austin that we know and appreciate. But yeah, they just said, yeah, we're gonna reveal it. We're gonna tell you which teams have how much GAM. And as it turns out, Austin is kind of towards the bottom of the pile. I mean, they may have enough to do everything that they want to do. We're certainly going to hope so. And of course, this all happened before, just this incredible kind of shift. New England, when this was published, had nearly $5.6 million in GAM. They now have considerably less, but they also have Leo Campana. Heading up everything, looks like the most on this list is Atlanta United. They have 6.5 million,
All the way at the
which
bottom,
is going to
guess
make
who,
them
Phil? Guess who?
guess who?
Houston Dynamo.
Oh no. Yeah, just over 2 million in GAM. With Atlanta, I think that's interesting because Chris Henderson is coming over now to help out Garth Lagerwey. That is a pretty potent pair of people in terms of being able to swing deals, and they have a lot of GAM in which to do that. You have, again, this kind of range from Houston at just over 2 million to Atlanta at 6.5. So you do have a lot of teams that are in that $3 and $4 million range, but I believe that Austin, I don't have the exact ranking in front of me from what I was seeing earlier online. I think they were like in about the 20th place out of the 30 teams. So there are teams that are definitely worse off than they are, but they are not with as much GAM as you would maybe prefer them to have if they are going after players like Leo Campana.
Yeah, 23 by my reckoning. And
Okay, good. Okay.
even if you take 3.5 million off of New England, New England is probably still just ahead of Austin. But since that GAM hit is being spread out over the 25 and 26 seasons,
Yeah, yeah.
you would expect them to still have, at
Mhm.
minimum in the upper 3 million range. And Austin is the last team with just over 3 million, and right under Austin is Charlotte at just under at 2.96976. The
Mhm.
real question, what is Austin going to do with that $71 at the end of their number? Are they going to is that how they're going to pick up Felipe? Sweeten the
Mm.
deal with an extra 71 bucks from the GAM total? What are they going to do
we
with
we
that
do still
magical $71?
we do still want the Felipe thing to happen, right?
Yeah, totally. And all joking aside, he's a good locker room presence. He's a journeyman.
Mhm.
He's good at not getting injured. He is one of those journeyman MLS players who falls into a category I think goes, under respected. There's the aging strikers, which people would
Mhm.
say are a constant or a curse, depending on your opinion in the league. But there are
Mhm.
guys like Felipe that are they the season making, shot calling playmakers? No, but they do come in clutch in important moments. They are incentivized to earn their league minimum salaries And sometimes they really do pull off some extraordinary things at an incredibly bargain price. And especially with cup competitions requiring midweek rotations and that sort of thing,
Sure, sure.
he was not bad at Orlando. I think he was just not necessarily ideally deployed there because their focus was not on their rotated squad and their overall roster depth, but the top of their performance, which is what almost got them to the finals. They
Yep.
made it a ways into those playoffs, but I think they wore down some of those tires at the top of the roster and didn't make as good of use of their roster depth in preserving the conditioning of their top guys. And that's
Yeah.
something that I feel like the recipe at Austin is they're going to use every ingredient
Mhm.
on order. They're not going to leave the weird shaped eggplants on the side in
Mhm.
this competition of Iron Chef. They're using
Yeah.
the whole kitchen.
Right. And to your point about Atlanta, or your point about Orlando, they spent a lot of the season like trying to figure out like who their attacking midfield is going to be, who their forwards are going to be. They started the season thinking that Duncan Maguire was going to be off to England, and then there was a paperwork mishap or a computer mishap, whatever kind of mechanism did not allow him to move overseas, which
One
is
way or another, a mishap.
the real story on that is, by the way, that they hit save as rather than send, which I have taught classes where that has plagued students who are using Blackboard, which
Yeah.
is not necessarily a intuitive system for learning, but is what a lot of schools rely on. But we are far afield on that. So a
Yeah,
couple things
I
on
didn't mean to
this.
talk so much about the Austin Aztecs, but the one other thing I wanted to mention about that Duncan McGuire thing is that
Yeah.
mishap ended. Duncan McGuire ended up really showing up for them this season,
Mhm.
and
Oh
so
yeah.
them screwing up like that, you could go down the causal blame or credit line quite a ways and go maybe they wouldn't have made it as far in the playoffs had they lost him because he was a pretty strong and steady player in their lineup.
Yeah, I think probably after he got over the disappointment, he was on the plane when they screwed it up.
God.
When they screwed up this was to Blackburn Rovers, by the way. So it was Blackburn that screwed that up. Shout out to friend of the show, Chase, who is inexplicably a Blackburn Rovers fan. But yeah, so you do have, I think, two kind of things from this. One, you see the utility of GAM and how that's used. And there is still a possibility of doing trades for like actual human beings for human beings, and GAM figures very little into it. Like today, for example, Gaston Brugman, who all of a sudden looked like a pretty attractive prospect who was out there, who was free from the galaxy. I don't know the mechanism by which they did this, but they ended up trading Brugman, who they were going to cut loose. I guess he's still under contract till the end of the year, so that's probably how they did that. So anyway, so Brugman is going from the Galaxy to Nashville for Sean Davis, which looks like maybe that is kind of a win-win trade for both teams. Maybe they're getting things that they need out of that, and then Nashville gets up to 1,000 in conditional GAM as well if certain performance metrics are met. That is kind of an interesting thing. I mean, you can still do those trades in the league, but you just find those to be kind of less and less a mechanism by why moves happen. So obviously thinking about GAM and thinking about, I'm just kind of curious about how teams knowing how much GAMs the other has will maybe kind of impact. Is that going to encourage additional trading, or is that going to be something where everybody's cards are shown in that aspect? So that's going to maybe that might have some effects the other way. I'm curious to see that. But the other thing I think is interesting is just that, GAM has been shrouded in mystery for years and years, and that's been the big joke. And again, like a lot of this work, it's been serious work. It's been, we are trying to calculate GAM because we don't know, and this is like a really big element in the whole transfer game and getting players and acquiring players and offloading players and all of that. But you have this kind of refreshing move towards transparency. Of course, in terms of salaries, we still have to learn that by MLSPA. Clubs can reveal what they want to or not want to about contracts. And oftentimes, clubs like Austin will reveal as little as possible about the contracts, although they have gotten better. Initially, they weren't even giving like year terms and things like that with contracts. And now at least we're getting much more kind of transparency there about that. But I mean, I think it's interesting. I think it's certainly for people covering the team, having that kind of transparency from the league is good, obviously, because that gives us more information and we get a better sense of where teams are. But now we actually have to process that information. We actually have to deal with numbers and try to get our heads wrapped around what this means and what this is going to mean for teams knowing this going forward. But definitely an interesting development, again, especially for everybody who has toiled to do those calculations over the years, like Long Cow, like the North End guys. We salute you. That is thankless work. But now the league has just kind of gone and done it for you.
So I mean, if we're done with the world of GAM, I have one last thing for us to touch on.
Okay.
Is Austin FC2 bringing Vlad the Impaler to Central Texas? Romanian player Vlad Danciuciu, which I think is probably close to the Romanian pronunciation.
Closer than I would have gotten. So yeah.
Vlad, I think we can just call him Vlad. Nobody's going to mistake him for another player. He's a U19 international for Romania. He's 18 years old, young striker who is coming over. In theory, it's not official, but the when it comes to rumors about the third division second team, I feel like it's pretty reliable. It's not this guy's agent is trying to get a better deal or trying to make a thing happen.
Right.
Somebody who was with Sassuolo and most recently Udinese in Serie A on their U20 team. There's good provenance there. A lifelong Inter Milan fan. Those biases don't play into my being able to respect youth organizations and their quality in other parts of Serie A that aren't the 20-time champions. I think what we see
Humble brag.
happening. Yeah, look, a humble brag, or I'm just speaking true facts. I feel like this and Peter Grogan are very positive indications of the Burrell organization working very hard to make use of that next pro team as the player development version of a tax shelter. It's like, oh, we're gonna invest here, and we're gonna maybe sometimes the investment will pay off. But in a case like this, that he has U.S. citizenship, that he would not occupy an international roster spot if he turns out to be a real hotshot 18-year-old that can play first team minutes. What if the real solution to Austin's striker issue is they're working on a DP adult, not U22 striker, but they've got a couple of real solid European prospects, only one of whom would occupy an international roster spot. And suddenly the depth issue at striker actually doesn't exist. And it's yet to be revealed. And it's this beautiful, magnificent secret. That's what I can hope this is indicating going toward, but we don't have enough data to go off of.
No, we don't. I mean, it's still very early in the process, but I mean, again, is this a player of the caliber where they can be a supplemental? And again, most of the minutes this year being with the second team, but having first team availability should people get hurt and should they need it. Obviously, with Zardes out, we're gonna still be theoretically we are going to get younger at that position, but who knows?
And I mean, the extension of this is you think about Open Cup, you think about Leagues Cup, you think about those Wednesday fixtures, and if some rotation involves promising guys from the second team who have been playing lots of second team minutes for months by then, being able to rotate in those Wednesday matches and give the theoretical new DP striker, give Diego Rubio some breathing room to not have to carry the full load. Tactically, that feels really sound. It feels like 2025 is going to be real interesting, not because of how little we know, but because of the indicators that we've got toward us definitely knowing a lot more in a couple months' time.
Yeah. And again, Austin was marked safe from the expansion draft, so they didn't lose anybody, but they did have to protect Fodry, which again, I thought was going to be a possibility that San Diego was going to do that. But they did some really mystifying stuff that didn't involve Austin at all, so that's fine. So Fodry still gets to develop. And again, if you are bringing Pico in, then all of a sudden you have, I think, some pretty appreciable winger depth. I don't know what that's necessarily going to do to Fodry, and I think there's going to be probably a lot of second team minutes for him once again, if that happens. And in terms of his development, I mean, that's fine. He can probably get some things out of one more year in next pro, but I also think that he is maybe getting to the point where he'll have to kind of make a decision about what what that next step is. I'm still not 100% convinced that he is going to be first team worthy on a consistent basis, but definitely rooting for it. I mean, it'd be great to see, but again, yeah, like you're saying, this kind of tax shelter idea that you're bringing in these young players, there's an opportunity for them to potentially develop, and if just one of them pans out, then all of a sudden you've got an appreciably good player on kind of a laughable number, and you theoretically can from there lock that player in for a good amount of time, maybe even into that player's early prime, talking like 23, 24.
I've got one last little prediction, and just thinking about the general nature of stuff. The rumors of Owen Wolf being looked at by this league owned team. CJ Faudré, I don't think the door is closed on a deal getting done for him to move to San Diego.
I don't either. Yeah.
Looking at their roster so far, they could still do with a CJ Faudré in that lineup. And we both know, him being native to that area, he would not be against it. And
Right.
I think that the sporting operation has effectively assessed the fact that there is trade value in him for sure, if the right deal is to be made. And I
Right.
think that they may just be slow playing that to make sure that they get the most ideal chunk of San Diego's 5,095,000 GAM number as part of a deal involving Faudré. Like the Campana trade completely upended that list as soon as it got published. I feel like this winter window is going to be real interesting, and we could see Austin's quote unquote worrying GAM amount suddenly change in important ways. And I think it'll be interesting to see the way the winter window plays out, knowing where everybody sits on this, knowing that FC Dallas is sitting on 4.5 million. How do they strategically deploy that, or absolutely fritter it away potentially, as they are making some moves of their own?
Right. And then again, also, if Ferreira and or Areola really are moving to Seattle, then what's going to happen to what kind of GAM is going to be involved with that, unless there are players moving the other way. And then what is Dallas going to be able to do? And then just, of course, though, it is always the question of Dan Hunt, whether he is willing to spend, right? So that is obviously, he wasn't Peter Musa, what they're going to maybe put around him. But again, it is an interesting year for them. They have a new head coach. Again, if you are moving Ferreira, he has been the talisman of this team the last few years. I think that that's going to be a big kind of question for them, especially like Copa Tejas was, right? And then Houston, just kind of pick back on them, circle back up. We talked about Herrera leaving, but again, there is still time for Carrasquilla to move in this winter window, which has not even opened yet. And I feel like Carrasquilla would be a really good addition to a European team. So all of a sudden, if you're losing him, you're losing a really important player in what they do and what they have done, and all of a sudden that team is needing to be remade. So you might have a Copa Tejas, which is 3 teams who are in various states of rebuild, depending on what happens, and will be playing, as we mentioned, in the most brutally, unpleasantly hot parts of the season. Hooray!
Man, the more I think about that compressed, like, back-to-back home date advantage, the more excited I am about the month of August in Texas. Weird.
Yeah.
I feel like the drama, the stories, the scenes, the tifos that could result from that's really special stuff. So we packed a lot into this compressed thing. Who knows? Maybe we will get something before Christmas, if we get something to talk about before Christmas, or if we think of more stuff that bears mentioning. Phil, Santa might drop another emergency podcast just in time for the reindeer to make their flight.
Maybe. Could be, yeah. Yeah. So again, we have established a lot of things here. One more thing I want to say about Copa Tejas. I do think that August is going to be interesting. And going to Q2 Stadium is the only time that month I'm going to step outside, because I think it's going to be terrible. So
Yeah,
I think it's going to be a
gonna be
ragingly
real
hot
rough.
summer. Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of recent new posts to the Substack, catch up on the newsletter, some good and interesting changes probably in the offing in the new year.
Could be, which will relate to another thing that we're going to do, another little thing that we're going to put in your Christmas basket is a survey. We haven't done one of these in a while. We're going to do this is a Verde All Day survey, of course, not necessarily an emergency podcast survey, though we might have some emergency podcast questions in there, and just want to take the temperature of the room and see like how you've liked the coverage and what you want to see more of, what you maybe want to see less of, things like that. And again, there might be some questions that are pertaining to some changes that we are contemplating, which will not really affect your experience at all, but could definitely affect our experience. We'll just put it that way. Look for that to drop in Verde All Day pretty soon. I'll put a link out there probably with the next thing that I write, which will be probably either travelogue thing or something that combines that with what I'm sure is going to be a very uneventful super draft tomorrow, but we will see. Again, Austin as the 12th pick. We don't seem to think that Burrell really rates the super draft based on how things went last year. Got Nate Jones, traded him for Gam, got Jimmy for Carlin, put him on the second team. And that was pretty much all that happened in the super draft. But again, we'll see. Every year is different. Maybe he has grown to appreciate it. Maybe all of a sudden this team is going to be freshly stocked with college players. We do not know.
Yeah, as you're whiling away the dead days in advance of Christmas, take a look at Phil's excellent pieces on the roster cap flexibility that Giassi Zardes' buyout provides, the Fafa and Owen Wolf rumors. The piece about the coaching goes into further depth on that, and start maybe making those travel plans for the Coachella Valley Invitational and read Phil's piece on that to help let the eggnog go a little bit further in making some travel arrangements.
And Moises, I take it that if Vlad gets signed, you are immediately writing.
I've been hungering for second team news so that I can follow up on my journeyman toil in rugby stadiums and places named after casinos and various other places that my next pro travels have taken me, including the next pro cup, which was I wanted it to be somewhere else and involving a different team, but it was a unique and interesting experience all its own.
All right. We're going to leave it there. If we do not talk to you before Christmas, obviously have a Merry Christmas or whatever it is you celebrate around this time of year. Of course, there are secular components, there are religious components. So whatever degrees of whatever merriment you have, I hope it's enjoyable. I hope it's awesome. We may be back before then, but if not, then we will try to be back sometime next week where, depending on when it is, I'd be either in Austin or New Orleans. And yeah, I think that's it. Recorded Emmy from a couple of weeks ago. Take it away.
That is like the worst thing I've ever heard in the history of the 7 years that I've been on this planet.